Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to Shenmue Dojo video. This is the third part of the character exploration series I've been doing. Today we are going to focus on wooing Ren, or just Ren for short, in this character video. Before I dive into the nitty gritty, I just want to give a shout out and a thank you to obviously Skill Jim James, my co-owner for the dojo, who's sort of pointing me in the right direction. Some references here. And also Shenmue's Miles Prower, who's been on the podcast before. I will be using his website for a little bit, or probably lesser well-known part of Ren's history, as it didn't quite make it into Shenmue 3. So, before I sort of dive in, let's talk about Ren as a character and essentially who he is. So Ren, and most of you will know this, he is the leader of the heavens. He's 19. He's quite feared within sort of Hong Kong, Wan Chai, and into Kowloon. Definitely likes his money, and is sort of partial to double cross is probably the word I would put it. That's like the brief overview, and what I'm going to do for everybody is pull up his bio from the Sega Japan website, which is a little known but very useful resource, which I'm also going to be using quite a lot in this video. So let's just pull this up so you can just see his sort of basic statistics here. On a side note, you can see there's lots of other characters here you can have a look at as well at your leisure. There's a little blurb at the bottom here, which I am going to go into a little bit further. It also talks about he doesn't trust anybody other than his companions. He's quick-witted, good at gambling, and doesn't mind cheating when he can't win. And he's very, very charming. One thing I'm going to pick up later is these sections just down here, because they're quite interesting. But we'll leave that here and park it just for the minute for the benefit of this video and sort of going forward. So in Shenmue games themselves, we don't actually learn a huge amount about his backstory, about his history. It's very much in this additional content in some of the manuals, the websites, or the theorization going on out there. We don't actually hear too much about Ren's backstory in game, other than what we know already, and that he's good for winding up Ryo, and he does have it in him to screw people over. As sort of time grows on, Ren changes from this guy who's out to make a quick buck from Ryo to actively helping him across two games. Obviously, when they're handcuffed together, that relationship really starts to blossom. It's very much like a brotherly type relationship. They wind each other up. More Ren than Ryo wind on that part of things. But it's quite a funny dynamic all the same. When I say he goes to help him, when you think about it, he devises the fake mirror plan in Shenmue 3, which he obviously throws to Landy later on. He goes out of his way to help Ryo in Niawu, rounding up the others to storm the castle. He actually sort of puts himself in harm's way a little bit in Shenmue 3, where he dives in on the Landy-Ryo fight, gets booted out of the way by Landy before sort of dragging Ryo away. So he is willing to put himself in danger, I guess, for Ryo. Now keep that thought in mind just a little bit for where I go with this video. And also, he then joins them on the Cliff Temple. But, and this is the big but here, he's focusing on the treasure. That seems to be his main driver here. But obviously, we know within him, he has history, I guess, of doing the right thing where needed. And as an aside to that, Shenhua probably isn't too keen on him either. She gives him the death stare when they meet in Hotel Niawu. So there's a very brief overview of him, I guess, and we don't learn a massive amount. He's mysterious in some regards, despite being front and center for the latter half of Shenmue 2, most of that, and sort of probably the latter third of Shenmue 3. He is there, so it's very interesting to see that we actually don't know a huge amount about him, and it then feeds into what's to come from him. But before I go into that, I'm going off on a little tangent here, in that Shenmue 3 was going to have a Ren side quest. Now this is where I reference Shenmue, so thank you so much for digging this out. It's a great resource, guys, if you haven't checked it already. I'm going to pull it up on the screen for you right now. So here we are, guys. I'm on the Shenmue's website, and what I have here is the page with all the unused dialogue that Ren may have been playable in Bailu. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole article in swathes of detail here, but what Shenmue has done is basically found some text files within the game that have some dialogue from Ren in it, in from Bailu Village. So going through some of the little text here, you can see that he was looking for prizes, walking around Bailu Village. It turns out that he might be looking for Rio, because it says here, I'm no stranger, just looking for a guy from Japan who's obsessed with martial arts. And then from Japan, you mean that Rio guy? Yeah, that's him. So it's obviously when Rio has left Bailu Village, and Ren's obviously slightly behind him. So there's this little gap in time, I guess, that when he gets to Niaowu, but then what does he do before that? As we sort of move further down, they sort of talking through where some bits and pieces in the village are, what he's going to need, jobs, chopping wood. So Ren could have been chopping wood, thugs as well, and they've been scaring the villagers. And there's then obviously a little side quest attached to that, and it's quite substantial here actually in terms of what goes on. There's loads of dialogue. It's downloadable, guys, and it's obviously well worth a look. And it's following Ren on his journey a little bit through how he potentially, in my mind at least, may end up meeting Rio. So it's a good little reference here to Ren's drivers and motivations to move things forward, I guess, which is really, really cool. So then, what is to come from Ren? Now, he is probably one of the more interesting elements or characters within the Shenmue story, because we don't know anything about him, and I keep going on to that. So I'm going to talk about here the bio that we had previously. So let me pull that up on the screen again for you. So you have to sort of bear with me a little bit, because this is Google Translate, so there are going to be some inaccuracies here. But the things that I think are really, really interesting here is this part here, like the bandana on his head, the back of Ren's signature blue jacket is embroidered with the Chinese mythical beast, the Kirin. That's interesting, because that then potentially feeds into the mythical beasts that are talked about all through the Shenmue series. And then this part here, no one in the heavens knows his identity, but he seems to be from the Mongolian horse tribe. Now, again, that's a loose translation. I'm sure that would be translated more accurately by someone who's obviously fluent in Japanese, and I think Switch may have done that already for us. But the point remains here that this website gives us a little bit more background onto Ren and what potentially could happen. Now, think about it here, the artwork around Ren, around the Mongolian horse tribe, which I will bring up on the screen for you now. So here, as you can see, this is off of our website. I'll bring it up again so you can see it. Actually, it's probably better if it's bigger here. Now, I have to excuse the blurry nature of it here. But here you can very clearly see Ren on horseback in what looks like his Heaven's clothing, carrying a sort of flag or banner, which I presume could be from his tribe. So that sort of feeds into that idea that he is from a Mongolian horse tribe. It makes absolute sense. It's an exciting part of the Shenmue series, and possibly where we could end up sort of going forward, I guess. When you look at his artwork and the bio, it's pretty obvious, and it fits together really, really well. Moving sort of away from that, but parking it for just a second, we then go into the chapter tiles, where it is believed that we will end up in Inner Mongolia, so Ren could in theory come across his ancestors or his own history. But I'm going to sort of leave the chapter cards aside a little bit, because it will feed into some theories that I've got going forward. So we know a bit more about Ren's background potentially, and that could be in Shenmue 4 and 5. What we do know is he loves money. And this is one thing that has been said throughout all the games so far. He loves his money. So this could be manipulation, I think, for Ren. And Niao-san, the master of manipulation, could be the one to manipulate him against Rio. So there's going to be a point in my mind where Ren will do, essentially, it will lead to the same area. We will do one of two things. He'll either do something silly and get manipulated and then come back and then join Rio again on his path, or he will do something noble, which will then potentially lead to his death. And actually, my point being here that I think if he's manipulated, or he's not but does something noble here, he is going to end up dying due to Ryo's actions. Now, the reason I have this sort of point in theory in my head is when you think of the 3 Shenmue games that we've had so far. Shenmue 1, the Mad Angels, he saves Nozomi. Pretty much nobody gets hurt. Chai ends up in the sea, but we know he survives. Whatever, fine. Shenmue 2, obviously he saves Wong and Joy and defeats the Yellowheads and Dol Neo and moves on, obviously, to Shenmue 3. And in Shenmue 3, he saves Shenhua and her father and his associates, well, whose name eludes me at this point. But nobody's really died. There's been no real harm to these people. So the stakes here in a Shenmue 4, Shenmue 5, they have to be up here now. Something has to happen to make Ryo go, oh, shit, my actions have caused this. At the moment, he's blinded by revenge. But maybe, just maybe, it might come in when his friend dies. For one of 2 reasons, either because he's been manipulated and actually realises the error of his ways and then dives in to save Ryo, or B, he realises Ryo's just bone idle stupid in what he's doing, tries to pull him out of a situation like he did with Lan Di, but ends up paying the ultimate price, which then leads to Ryo's sort of epiphany moment, if you like, around the bigger picture and how his journey towards revenge is not the way to go. And then it sort of comes into the chapter cards, which I've sort of asked people to park for the benefit of the video here. So chapter card 9 shows Ryo with a body in his arms, and you can loosely see around his head a white bandana. Now we know Ren wears a white bandana, so the theory being here that it is his. And in chapter card 10, you see that bandana in very much full flow. So this could theoretically be a tribute to the friend that he lost. And therefore being sort of a way to acknowledge the path that he's been on, I guess, is probably the way I would put it. As I say, it could be the moment that he dedicates himself to the bigger training, the bigger cause, and takes his focus away from revenge, but actually into the wider way of potentially taking down the Chi Men, for example. So there's, like I say, there's a massive amount here with Ren that we could go into, and there's lots to come from. He is one of the most popular characters in the series, and I think he will have a massive impact on the later journey of Ryo. For me, it makes absolute sense that Ren will put himself in harm's way to save Ryo again, paying the ultimate sacrifice. And that would be a good way to end Ren's journey. I know not everybody in the community may agree with it because they like Ren and don't want to see that happen necessarily. But I think from an impact point of view, what the hell point of view, it would be a really good way to go. And it would help Ryo develop as a person. So guys, what do you think about Ren as a character? How do you think he will develop as time moves on? What do you want to see from him? How do you want his story to develop as we go through Shenmue 4, Shenmue 5? Drop us a comment below, give us a like, share, subscribe on YouTube, Twitter, all the usual places. And I'll be back with a video in the not too distant future. But for now, guys, take care. Have a good one.